Thank you very much for coming. My name is Maura Graham-Vecellio. I've been teaching for 30-odd years in the Meriden school system, which is in the central part of the state. And I'm very happy to have all of you here interested in science. And we are all in each district very different in our focus on science. And it would be really nice to hear from each of the districts just because it is really varied across the state for sure. I want to give you a little background, very little. Again, worked in Meriden all my life, but lots of different grade levels. I am also a member of the Next Generation Science Standards cadre for the American Federation of Teachers. And I was fortunate enough to be recruited in to help with lots of wonderful work that the union was doing to give feedback as to the Next Generation Science Standards many years ago, like going on 15 probably, when they were being developed. We were using our in-class knowledge and experience to be able to look at what they were providing for us as performance expectations, seeing if they were reasonable from real classroom teachers. They really did use the teachers for that. And we also used the Common Core State Standards, and we looked to see how those Common Core State Standards could be developed as the science is developed. And that's why you see them on that page, that particular page that we have in the Next Generation Science Standards document. On the bottom, they're all referenced. Math and language arts is referenced, and the teachers really did the work. We were brought over to Washington and we put it all together, and it was really a project over quite a few years. So when they say they're made for and looked at by teachers, it's true, and they're still doing that on and on. It's an ongoing process. So this feedback that you have for these new things that we're doing, even though the Next Generation Science Standards aren't new anymore, they're new to some of the districts, and how they're using them is new to some of the districts. They're now getting embedded in some of our curriculum because it is not a curriculum. The Next Generation Science Standards isn't a curriculum. It's a guideline for how to get kids to perform in a specific way, to get lead to understanding in a scaffolded way, in a scope and sequence way, which was also looked at, a grade level across and all the way through up into the 12th grade, to see that that was eventually covering the college and career readiness type activities that are going to be needed for science in the future. So my background in that was very in-depth when it came to the Next Generation Science Standards. Before that, the Common Core State Standards, I was trained in, I was really in the math area, so I'm a math science kind of a person. I taught second grade for a long time. I taught fourth grade. I teach kindergarten now and love it. Taught that before for a few years also. I taught at St. Joseph's College also, an urban education program. So we had master's level teachers coming in and working together to be able to get a master's in urban education, which was very interesting too. So that's where my background comes from. I also love science and it is my pleasure to be with you today. So what we're going to do is we're going to have a hands-on activity, and I really want you to please participate any way you can with your voice, with your opinion, and try if you can, if you have the materials, to do the activities. Because when you're doing the activity, you're thinking like a learner. And when we plan as a teacher, you want to think like the learner. That's what we do. We know our students very well. We know our grade level very well. We have experience and we bring that to the table all the time. But when you're actually doing the learning, you can see the mistakes that we made or the challenges that might happen. So it is a very valuable tool. I don't honestly know how to teach any other way. I wasn't always a science teacher, but I did have the opportunity, just to add one last thing, to be a science special for 6 years in Meriden. And then the money went away and we couldn't do it anymore. But I had all the grades, 1st through 5th, come to me as a special. And it was just such a wonderful experience. The kids still talk about it. They love it. And they're just leaving the system now. So I won't have, my 5th graders were the last grade that I had because the money got cut and I went back to kindergarten. So that's me. But I do like I say, welcome any kind of participation in any regard and opinions about what's going on. So what we're going to do is a very, very brief overview of what the next generation science standards are. It's going to be about 3 minutes and 44 seconds, and it's going to give you a quick synopsis and summary of those particular points that are important for the 3 dimensions. This is what we talk about in the next generation science standards. And if it's more than you need to know, okay. If it's less than you need because you have more, I think it's still valuable, because even if we've heard of these things again, we could still layer our learning and get something new, even though it's something that we might have heard of before. Before we go to that quick overview, we'll take a hello and have everybody say hello and tell us maybe the district that they're in and the grade level and why they decided to come. How about that? So the district that you're in, the grade level that you might be teaching, and why you decided to come. We're going to go ahead and share that if that's okay. All right. And Maria, since you already had your practice at it, would you come be my first person?
Okay, perfect. My name is Maria Núñez. I am a retired teacher from New Haven, Connecticut, but right now I am working with the English Learners Department, and we are trying to integrate the science and the literacy in our district. So that's why I am here. I want to hear from the best.
Thanks. Very good. Thank you very much. I'm just going to go on the screen. I don't know if your screen is the same as mine. So would you mind if I ask you in my screen? Judy, would you be able to share?
Sure. I am working in the North Branford School District. I'm working this year with pre-K through 2nd students. It's our first year of having science as a special. We're trying to roll that out. And the reason that I'm here is to really try to have a better understanding of the standards so that I can just do the best job that I can do for my children. Obviously, I've known about them, but now that it's more of a focus for me, I want to make sure I get it.
Yeah, and it takes time and experience like you're getting right today for sure. You'll get some things today that will be ready to go and do. And you'll put your flavor into it and it'll be ready to go for sure. Kate, your name is Kate, but your last name is on the screen.
Yeah, Juicy. Yes, Juice NT. But yes, hi. I'm a kindergarten teacher in New Haven. Listening to your resume, with the exception of the St. Joseph School, it sort of mirrors mine grade level wise. Started off teaching in 4th, taught 2nd, and now in kindergarten, and feel kind of like, I mean, I've loved teaching all grade levels, but really feeling a groove in kindergarten. But for a while also did sort of science, well, in our discovery room at the time, and with a focus on grades 2, 5, and then and 5th and 6th. So yeah, I just love science too. So I just want to make sure I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing. And I also teach at an environmental magnet school. So this year we now have a STEM class, sort of, I guess, you can call it a special, sort of that separate entity, but just I have a lot of fun integrating science and literacy and math and just, trying to pack it all in.
We're good at it, aren't we? What do you think, Jamie? Thank you for coming.
Glad to be here. So I teach in New Haven as well. I teach kindergarten through 8th grade engineering. We don't call it a special, but it's sort of in that vein where the kids come to me for discrete learning. So I'm here just to, deepen my understanding of the NGSS so that I can do a better job for our kids. Unfortunately, right now, I'm not really teaching them the engineering. My focus in my building has been moved to technology and managing devices. So I'm disappointed in that. So also here to keep in it,
Sure, absolutely. And it's really so important that your job, we are diverse and we're certainly flexible as teachers, and that is what's needed. So it'll come back. We're hoping, right? Heather, would you be able to say hello?
Hi, I'm Heather. I teach 1st grade now in Meriden. I taught term 1 online 2nd grade. Now I'm 1st grade in person.
I see. Thank you very much for coming. It's a pleasure. We are colleagues in Meriden then. Yeah, very good. And Matt, would you like to say hi? All righty. Or the Yvette, I'm not sure if that's your.
So, yep.
Hi, how are you? I'm sorry I'm late. I was trying to log in. I was trying to sign in through my cell phone, but I couldn't do it in travel.
Hi, we'd like to see us each other's faces.
So my name is Yvette Garcia, and I'm a kindergarten teacher in New Britain.
Nice, thank you very much. So a few people from New Britain, a few people from New Haven, a few people from Meriden, and our friend from that's just got back from work that says iPhone. When you come back, or if you are here, you're welcome to say hello if you'd like.
Hi, I'm Allison. I teach preschool in New Britain for many years, going on 20 years. I love it. So I'm here because I just really want to learn how to integrate science in a hands-on, like developmentally appropriate way into my lessons and activities. You know, I feel like science and social studies are those subjects that are often kind of put on the back burner, but I really think it's important to put them more on the front burner with literacy and math and the social emotional, which is what the 3 areas that we're really working on.
Yes.
So I'm here to try to get some ideas and just best prepare the kids for kindergarten and future grades. I think it's so important. So that's why I'm here. So hi.
That's awesome. I think we have a nice group, and I think we're going to get some good benefit from today's workshop. I think that the very first thing that I would like to do is to do that brief overview. And you don't have to take notes. You can listen informally, or if you have any questions, maybe that's what you could write down, and I could just basically cover them as we're going along. But I do want you to, whenever I show a video for any reason, I always have a reason for you to be listening. So you're listening to the 3 dimensions. You're listening to know even the name of the 3 dimensions, even in a general fashion. If you already know the 3 dimensions and you know them already, maybe you could just understand them a little bit more, what they mean, and how the 3 together is how they want us to lesson plan. And they want us to implement lessons, giving consideration to all 3 of those areas. Okay, so I am going to share my screen. It's going to just take a short time. And it will be a 3-minute and 44-second little video that was by a man called Paul Anderson. And he does something called Wonders of Science. I don't know if you're familiar with him or not, but he's done a lot of really nice work for teachers to be able to explain all the things that we need to do, because if you ever saw the actual document of the next generation standards, it can be very threatening. It's color coded all over and it's in sections, and the wording for even people that have experience in science, sometimes, I don't know about you, but I have to read it more than a few times and I feel comfortable with science because I'm like, what are they saying again? And it's a really interesting thing. They put a lot of thought into how they worded it. Also, they have clarification statements, because you think one thing right away when you read it, and then you're like, but there's a boundary, or a clarification statement means, no, but we really mean don't do that, or a boundary of don't do this, because that's way farther than they're ever going to get. So those are the kinds of things that are a little complicated in the next generation science standards. And we use them as a tool for our curriculum. Some people are looking at them as the curriculum, and just this another clarification, it's not a curriculum. It is a way to get to formulate a curriculum to get them towards the goal of the standards. Okay, so I'm gonna probably talk while I share, because I can't usually stop talking. That's my area. So we're gonna go and look at this brief video, and we're looking to listen for the different areas of the dimensions of the science standards, okay? And it should be coming up. I'm sharing my screen. And this is also the very scant PowerPoint, which I did not want to do a PowerPoint for this presentation, but there is one. And if you wanted it, I would be happy to be able to send it. And I'm sure Jennifer can help me do that, because I did this to be more hands-on. So this is the most talking we're going to do, but it is important, the overview. So this is in the PowerPoint. If you do want me to send it to you and Jennifer gives permission for that, we can certainly get it to you. And certainly you can go on YouTube and find it also. His name is Paul Anderson, okay?
Hi, it's Paul Anderson, and in this video, I want to answer the following two questions. What is the NGSS and why is it important? The NGSS, or the Next Generation Science Standards, are simply a set of goals, but they'll lay the groundwork for K-12 science education for the next 20 years. Now, quick disclaimer, the NGSS were created by a bunch of smart people with the help of Achieve. That's not me. This video and all subsequent videos are going to be based on my experience. Over the last 5 years, I've been working with schools and teachers as they implement the NGSS. That's hundreds of teachers who impact thousands of students. There's not a day that's gone by that I haven't been working on the NGSS. And as I dig into it, I find these standards to be incredibly valuable. They have inquiry built in, they have engineering built in, they build wonder in the classroom. As I've taught lessons and seen other teachers teach lessons, it really can transform what's going on in science education. But the first time I meet teachers who are dealing with the NGSS, a lot of the time they're simply confused. And that's what this video is for. First time you look at the standards, you might just be inundated by the documentation. Let's say you're a third grade teacher and these are all your standards. You get names that you're not familiar with, flow charts, appendices, and these 3 different dimensions, connections to the Common Core. A lot of the time you just can't see the forest for the trees. So I want to help. First thing I've done is I've gone through and color coded all the standards and given them names. You can find that on my website called The Wonder of Science. But let's look at some grade 1 standards, or performance expectations is what they're called. In lower elementary, you'll have about 10, and that number is going to grow as we go to middle school. And high school, you're going to have around 20 of these in the course of a year. But if we look at just one standard, we're going to break that apart. First thing you'll see is going to be the orange. The orange is called the disciplinary core idea. That's just the content. It's the science content that they're going to learn. In this case, it's going to be that objects in darkness can be seen only when illuminated. What does that mean? Well, up here, there's an apple, but you can't see the apple until I turn the light on and it's illuminated. That's the word that we want first graders to start using. What's going on? The light is bouncing off from the light off the apple to your eye, so you can see it, but also light is coming from the light itself. And so that's illuminated as well. Now, if that's the old standards, we would have ended there. You would have taught students this, maybe given them an experience, but that's the end. But this is only a third of the standards. Let's move on to the blue. The blue is going to tell you what the kids will do. These are the science and engineering practices. In this case, they're going to be making observations essentially to construct an argument. So they have to be presented with a phenomena, something they haven't seen before. Let's say it's shadow puppets, and they have to explain what's going on, what's causing that shadow. And they have to understand what's going on from a physical science perspective to kind of make that argument. Now, they might do okay with a claim and tell you some of the observations that they're making, but their reasoning will be poor because they don't have a framework to really understand what's going on. That's why we have the third dimension, these cross-cutting concepts. This is how we think about science. And the one that they've chosen for this standard is cause and effect. So if they use a graphic organizer of cause and effect, in this case, the cause is going to be the light. If light hits a object or comes from a light bulb, then it's going to be illuminated. But if we eliminate that light, then we have darkness. And so this is what a 3-dimensional standard really is. It's telling us not only what is the science that the students are going to learn, it also tells us how the students should learn through this process called inquiry, and then how the students should be thinking. These are the 3 dimensions. They're embedded in the standard, and they should be in every learning experience that the students have. Every assessment they take, it should be 3-dimensional in nature.
And so that's this short but sweet summary of what the next generation science standards are. Who is very familiar with the standards? If you're very familiar with the standards, you understood what he was saying. If you're not very familiar, that in itself might be confusing. So I want to clarify a little bit more. The 3 papers that I did send for you to have a copy of, if you do have them, or you don't have them, I will show you what I'm asking, the ones that we're really going to concentrate on. This is the grid that I sent to you, and I could put it on the share my screen, but I think that you all have it. It has across the top K1, 2, and 3. And then it has the actual science and engineering practices down the column, the first column. You see that column. So these down the column are the practices. And that's today, even though we may use them regularly, they're really critical to be able to have and share with students so that they have lots of opportunity to do not just a few of these, but a variety of these over the year. Every lesson that you're going to do just now in just a few minutes will not have really strong pull to each of these practices. Some are going to be stronger and some are going to be weaker for the practices, and it might not really be working. The practice might not be evident in the lesson at all, and that's perfectly fine. In fact, if there was every lesson had everything, it'd probably be too complicated of a lesson anyway. So it is going to be your discretion to choose what practices are comfortable with you and what you're familiar with. Most likely you'll use those first, but then when you do it, after some time, I would use that same grid and I would put down my lessons, lesson 1, lesson 2, sound, light, or whatever the ones I'm doing in my grade level. And I would make a checklist in my plan book and see which one of these practices am I using more often? Which one am I using mostly? And maybe I better start thinking about how I can do some of the other practices to give my student a better understanding of the variety of practices that we could get them used to. So that's what this checklist is all about. When we're doing it in just 2 minutes, we're going to take a look at that grid and you're going to take your pencil or pen and you're going to check off which one you think was the strongest. You could put 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or you could just put a check as to see which one was really used, strongly in this particular lesson. All right. And so that's going to give us good background to, at least if you're not familiar with the standards, to get involved in the practices, to know what those practices are. What topic will you use? You'll have your curriculum that your system provides. So let's get started. The first thing that I had on the list of things to do for kindergarten was for you to have some kind of a calendar or a grid. So this is a very primitive one I got from one of my plan books. Is everybody okay to see this? Do you okay? Could you shake your head if you do see it well? Because I could put it on the screen, but I don't think it's necessary. I'd rather, okay. So this is something there that we can develop. The students in kindergarten are going to be using and sharing observations of weather conditions to describe patterns over time. That's how the performance expectation is worded in the next generation science standard. And that's not that hard to understand. Some of them are a little bit more difficult, but we're going to use and share observations. So some of us still do calendar. Some systems don't do calendar anymore. Preschool might do it more than a kindergarten or first or second grade. In our system in Meriden, they don't even promote that at all anymore. Even though some people decide to do it, you have to have a purpose for it. This is a great purpose. So you can do it because I think it's a life skill. But that's my opinion, and that's not everybody's determination in their district. So if you had a grid, if you did not have a calendar at all, you could have and make yourself a grid. You can do a 2-week grid. You could do a 1-week grid. You can have a whole month-long grid. The whole idea right now is to take your grid. If you don't have one, you don't really need to make an actual grid, but it's always a good idea because using data and being able to interpret and analyze things that they see is a really wonderful thing to do for any child in any grade level. So let's just take our pencil and we're going to say, we're going to look at 7 particular weather conditions, and we're going to make a determination, even though weather changes in a day, mostly what was Sunday, and you're going to just make one up. In real life, we'd be looking out the window. You might have a homework assignment that they take it home and they actually do the actual observation with their family. They could be doing it daily in the classroom, but this is a Sunday. We're going to do a whole week of observation. Let's do it. So I'm going to ask you to make observation, a made up observation for a minute, from Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. So you're going to make it as simple as you can. You might have a rain or a sun, whatever you decide to do, you're going to do it for 1 week, 7 days. Ready? Got your pencil? I'm going to give you a short amount of time. Ready, set, go. Record your data. Now this would take sometimes over time. I'm drawing mine and I'm trying to think of really what was the last week like. And I'm thinking primary, so I'm making simple pictures and icons so that they could understand for the most part. And when you're done, put your thumb up. Just a week. All right. And some people are more particular about their pictures. You don't have to worry about it. In fact, you're probably going to pre-plan and have a key that you've already done on an anchor chart, and you're going to already have them choose from the key. That's what I would possibly recommend, or that you would have. So in this case, this is mine. Everybody, can you put yours up so we can see yours? Yep. And you're putting it on an old calendar. That would be perfectly fine. Great. Sure. So again, we are already doing a little bit higher order thinking because we're making an observation and we're interpreting that and putting it and making it into an abstract form. So we have that kind of data collection. So I'm going to do a walkthrough lesson, which is not the whole thing because for time's sake. Now, what I have done is I have made these already. And I would like to have the kids' input, but if I don't want to, I have another option to already have them pre-done. If they're already pre-done, that's upside down, that doesn't work. If that is, it's already pre-done, this would be a month. This would be another way to use the same information. And I decided to do a month. Maybe I could do this in the beginning before I did the observations alone, just to have them see what it looked like as a concluded piece of data for an entire amount of months. If you needed to do a smaller amount because of the age of the child or it's hard for them to scan and they don't know exactly where to look, that's why I'd have that anchor chart to show what that little puffy looking thing was, because it's going to mean a cloud, or what the raindrop looks like, or such. So so I have two-sided on purpose because I want to be able to have them compare the weather conditions, and you would be very surprised to see how easily they can tell, even without counting. Some of them already, preschool and kindergarten, can tell which is more, which is less. It looks like in this particular case, it's a lot more rainy days than sunny days. There's some cloudy days, and we could go on and on from there to make our questioning, have them think about, now what season do you think that is? What month might that be? And why do you think so? So you can see that a very basic 1 week, I would not say less than 1 week because we want to do it over time, but a month would be even more, but it might be too much for your child. You have to make that decision. You know, it depends on your students. They're going to just look at the more and the less and see what the tendency is, which is what weather forecasters do. Now you can go continue on and you could be able to show, I'm showing you with a clear piece of paper, which doesn't help very much. I'm going to ask, the clear piece of paper has tally marks. And I just put the clouds, the sun, and the rain, and I had the kids tally up using the graph that you did. So why don't you do that right now? Okay, just in that 7-day thing, see your tendency, make your tallies on cloudy or rainy or whatever ones you have. I don't know exactly. And you already see that there's lots of information there that the kids have to interpret. They already know, if they know tallies, which is one of the things they're going to have to learn, which is another really nice basic tool that kids can use all grades. And I'm hoping that you can see as teachers that you can utilize this and be able to compare it. So one person's piece of information, maybe Judy's information and Maria's information, are very different, and they could have a conversation about why it is different and what did you see and how do you know, and those kinds of things. Do you see where we can go with this kind of a lesson? It has many, many, many implications. you can keep it over a long period of time. You can do it in the beginning of the year, in the middle of the year, and the end of the year. If you're talking about change in weather, which is really the critical concept, that you want to have the changes that happen, you can also utilize something like this to be able to do it. So it's that simple of a walkthrough. That's kindergarten. Are there any questions or comments on how you might be able to use it in your classroom?
No, thank you. I appreciate the questions. That's one of the things I feel stuck in. I think I mean, for me and my class, we do a great job of making observations daily and making a graph, but taking the graph and looking at it throughout the year, referring back to it, using it to take it one step further with the tally marks, and just, you know, making, thank you for the suggestions in interpreting the data differently and just taking it steps further. I appreciate that.
Absolutely, great. And if you're doing all this observation anyway, why not put it on a piece of paper, laminate it, put it on another side, and use it again? I mean, why are we making more work for ourselves?
No, I love that. I found this interactive calendar and it graphs it for us. So now, I mean, if I can just take the completed version, print it, laminate it, like, right, exactly. I'm not reinventing the wheel. It's there. We already did the work. So
yeah, right. And when they take ownership of the work that they actually did, I could give them this paper, but if they actually do it, that's going to be even more valuable, because they were part of the entire process.
I mean, especially at the end of the month, since we just finished November, we were able to compare the graph itself, but then to take it and compare months and to look at the change over time just really kicks it up a notch. So
it does kick that much. And you know what? Kindergartners step up, and pre-kindergartners too. They're amazing. They look at things and they come up with interpretations, actual interpretations from what they see, as long as they can have the language. So we have to give them that opportunity with speaking and listening to be able to do that. So that lesson could be as simple as giving them a graph and having them talk about it, but the value is very, very valuable. It doesn't have to be something written. It doesn't have to be a test or anything. It just has to have them giving the opportunity to look at things like that. Or come up on the board and be able to make one on your smart board, or see it on the smart board and have someone be the teacher. Or the weather watchers. Oh my gosh, they're so cute. So I give them a microphone, right? And they got the microphone and they're the weather watcher. And today's like, I'm channel 103 because that's our room number.
Oh, that's so cute.
So fun. It's so fun. And if you ever want to go on YouTube and see the weather watchers, the kindergarten weather watchers, it is adorable and really, really fun.
Thank you.
Let's take this time to look on our grid now. And that grid has the science and engineering practices on the right-hand column that is going, the first column going down. And then you see next to it the K for the kindergarten lesson. Can you go through real quick and just put a check or a number 1 on the one that you think works best the way you would do it, would work best for you doing that kind of a lesson? Number 1, and then check off other ones that you think may or may have been involved in that particular kind of lesson. But it has to be your lesson, not just the one that I just walked through. Okay, it's the one that you might do based on that kind of information. So take a minute to think. And I'm going to say the practices out loud. They say if you hear them 3 times, you're going to remember them better, but you'll hear them at least 4 times because we're doing K through 3. And check it off. If you think it's number 1, put the number 1, okay? Asking questions. Do you think that you would, as a teacher, ask questions, or that the children would be asking questions as they do this type of an activity? Developing and using models. Did they use some kind of a model to be able to do this lesson? Planning and carrying out investigations. This longer term type observation is, I would definitely consider it an investigation. Did they plan it? Did they carry it out? Analyzing and interpreting data. Math computational thinking. Constructing explanations. Engaging in argument from evidence, or obtaining and communicating information. or and or. So can somebody be a volunteer to share what you think was the number one that was used in the way you decided to do this activity? I would like to put you on the spot, but I won't. If you're not familiar with these, there is no wrong answer. There is no wrong answer. It's how you decide to implement the lesson, right? Anybody have a volunteer? Jamie, you look like you might be ready.
Probably analyzing and interpreting data.
You say that would be number one for the how you would do it. Can you?
I think so.
You're the engineering person, right?
Yep.
Yep. So how would you see that being used, the data?
So just like you were saying, we're talking about, by looking at the data, trying to determine what month that is or what season that might be, really just taking a critical look at what the weather would be in a certain time period, and then what our weather looked like to be able to determine that.
And it's going to be different in different areas of the country and different areas here, but and I think that is definitely one that is a big red flag for what we're using. The other ones are too, and again, the purpose of this grid is to see what you do most often, what you do most familiar, and how you can do the things in maybe not this lesson, but a different lesson, to be able to have the variety of practices that you can use to give the children a better preparation for the things they're doing. And I'm going to go on to the next lesson unless there's any other information. All right, so the next lesson we're going to do has to do with first grade, but the idea here, again, if it's not your actual curriculum, it might be something that the practice you might need practice at. So if you're not actually doing the activity, you still might be doing the practice. So that's why this is still good for no matter who is being involved in this particular activity. So the second, the first grade activity that you're going to do has to do with the rubber bands and the box, if you have one. If you don't, I do, and I will be able to show you that shortly. So we're going to see how sound and vibration work. And can you see the box? Can you see okay? So this is Dunkin' Donuts. I do drink coffee. And I have a couple different elastics. If you have some elastics, can you stretch them while we're talking? Because it's important to stretch them. Kids, we're going to need to have some understanding of how to use the tools correctly. So you're absolutely going to make sure they're going to understand how to use it safely, and that it is to their advantage to use them appropriately, or we'll not be using them at all. And my kids do really well with that because I mean what I say. And you do want to use, I do want to use hands-on, and we do want to use hands-on, but it has to be done appropriately. So the stretching part will be so it won't snap, and you'll always want to hold on to one side of it. And I'm talking to you as if I would be talking to a learner that was a young learner, and I would like to make sure that it stays where I'm putting it. So I want you to know that we are going to create a sound machine, and I'm going to ask you to use the bands around this box, and I want you to be able to put them in any way you decide so. And I'm going to ask you to show us your instrument or your sound machine, because it doesn't have to be an instrument necessarily, because lots of things make sounds that aren't instruments, like a siren or an alarm. And I just want you to try to create your sound machine. When you're done, I'm going to ask you to show us. So take your elastics and you put them in any way you see fit. And I'm showing you mine while everybody is working. I did not do it in any uniform fashion. I also purposely did not tell the students how to do it. I just said, make their sound machine, because I really like their ideas, because they could have done it a different way, and they still can do this more than once, and it will be different. They will see as they are going to be using their sound machine. And I try to not necessarily say playing, because it's, again, sound machines don't always have music. It's not always music. It's not always that. So I'm going to try to make a sound with this, and I'm going to notice what's happening. And I'm pretty sure everybody's finished making theirs. Can I see yours too? Can you show me now? Show me what you just made. If I was doing it with students, I'd give them a little bit more time than that. Ooh, that's interesting. Cool. It's a tissue box with something. You muted. Volume. iPhone, my friend Allison.
Yes, I teach preschool and I love doing the multiple intelligences. So I've done guitars with my students.
Nice.
So this is one. It's in the workshop because 2 of the rubber bands broke, but
Yeah.
but yeah, they love this, and they decorated the top, the toilet paper or the paper towel tube.
Nice.
So they love this.
Now, Allison, if you were doing this, would you show them exactly how to make it, or would you give them the materials? How would you do it?
You know, it's funny you ask that, because when I first started teaching, I would do a model, but now I think you should put the materials out and let them create, because obviously that's more developmentally appropriate. So
Yeah, and they can make a cello, they can make a guitar, they can make probably something else that I can't even imagine.
exactly.
Right? Obviously it's going to be a string instrument, right? Do you tell them it's an instrument, or how do you word it?
So what I did is it was in my music, because I try to do all the subjects. So I did music, but that was about the vocabulary was guitar. So I was teaching, that's how I was teaching. And they got to pick how many rubber bands they used. So that was adding in math, that 1-to-1 correspondence. Mm-hmm. And I'm thinking for older kids, you could even do measurement too, with like how long it is, like measuring. I know in preschool, we do length. Like we do teach the inches.
Yes.
So that, especially at the end of the year, so they could measure it. There's just so much learning. I love it. I love the hands-on.
Will they all have the same box in materials, or do they bring something in from home, or how does that work?
Well, with the COVID, obviously, we haven't really done this, but
of course,
right. But everybody has their own materials. Mm-hmm. But I have to tell you, I actually would like to create like a STEAM lab, kind of like a center base. That's kind of on my to-do list for the new year, where they can pick almost like a menu of materials. So because I would like to do this year. So maybe even, have some of these materials and then let them pick. Then I can give it to them where it's just theirs, and it's more safe, where they just touch it and then see what they create, right? The builds and constructs.
I've done and I've seen things without COVID, having the materials, have them pre-plan it. Engineering, my friend Jamie, have them already have a thing in mind. These are 5-year-old kids. This is what I have. I have these, I have these, I have these, I have these, I have these. Now you're going to make a sound machine. I know you know what I have, and I might draw and label the things just so they see that what they are, or I might put them up with a magnet so they see what I have. Then they take their paper, the little sketch paper with little notepads, and I want them to sketch what they're going to do. So this is a pre-engineering task. They're actually going to make a plan, and they do it. It's the coolest thing and when they get used to stuff and then they make it and it looks just like it, I swear, that's what I was telling Jennifer. I have pictures, so many beautiful pictures of when I was in the field for that number of years. And I have pictures of the plan with the item that they made. And I swear it looks like the teacher did it. It's like, I couldn't even do it. I'm not spatially adept like this little one was. It is so exciting. It really is.
It is. And real quick, I don't want to get off topic, but in New Britain, we have to do play plans. Well, I know last year we did where that's exactly what they do. They think about what they're going to do, and they have to write about it, draw a picture, and then write about it, and then go do it. So it's exactly what you were talking about, and it's amazing. They're excited to do their play plans, so then they can go play.
Right. And the play plan is going to make things more appropriate, and purposeful play is a big thing. And I feel like my whole teaching career is purposeful play, because the kids don't even know what we're doing, and we're having a great time, and we're learning too. And that's what we're here for today. Yeah. So let's show our item if you have it. If you don't have it, you can see mine. And I did not put this on purpose in the direct way someone who knows the science of it would. I put a thin one and then a medium one and then a thin one and then a medium one. So they're not in the order of the pitch or the vibrational sound. It's not going to be, but I want to not do that. I want them to hear the difference. So I'm going to let you listen just for a second and see if you can listen. And they'll do this for, half an hour, right? Pretty much, because they think that, first of all, they made it, and then they want to listen to see if there is a different sound. And that's not easy for little ones to do because it's a very subtle difference in sound. But did you hear the difference over the internet? Can you hear the difference? Can anybody else share the one that they have? Nope, it's no problem. If we do this kind of activity, we are after science, aren't we? We're after, why does it make a sound? We're after, why does it make a higher sound or a lower sound or a louder sound or a softer sound? And all the words that they'll say and not even know that we're learning about it. You don't have the front loading idea anymore when we work in the next generation science standards. It's not, it will be interjected likely. They'll might say it in a way that you want, they want the word and then you give them the word as you're talking to them, but it's not front loaded. Do you know what I mean? When I say front loaded, like we used to do in many of the other subject areas. So that's the activity for first grade, and it has a lovely implications for any kind of sound and vibration. They'll come up with it. It's moving, Mrs. Graham. It's going up and down, or it looks like a wave. They'll say it. They'll say it before I even told them what it is. And that's the kind of idea that we want to do. And it's with recycled materials that are probably available around. So if you're doing distance learning, you might be able to have them have a box somewhere and maybe an elastic around, maybe not, but it could even be one elastic and it would still be a valuable experience. Let's go to our grid, everyone. Let's go to our grid, and we're going to take a look and see at the grid to see if we can go down the first, the column that says number 1, which is the third column on our grid, and see if you can determine if you did this kind of an activity, which practice, which is a science and engineering practice, would you be using? All right, ready? So you're going to put number 1 at the one that's most strongly used in the way that you could implement it, and check the ones off that you think we're done anyway. All right, so I'm going to read them and you're going to either check them or put that number 1. Ready? Asking questions. Did you or the child do that? Did you or the child develop and use a model? Plan out and carry investigations. Interpreting data. Using mathematical thinking. Constructing explanations. Engaging in argument, or obtaining and evaluating information and communicating that. Can anybody please share the number 1 in your estimation of what we did? We heard from Allison, we heard from Heather. How about Judy? Judy, what do you think?
I'm a little bit torn between planning and carrying out investigations or developing and using models, because I think that it could go either way, the way that I would think about doing it.
Yes.
And that I would hope that the models would lead to more investigation. What if I put the elastic horizontally instead of vertically? Or what if my container was plastic and your container was paper?
Exactly.
I think those are the things I think. So the model is important, but it's important to lead you to what I think is the most important thing of the lesson.
Absolutely. Very wonderful explanation of that. And nothing is wrong. Remember, it's not wrong. It's just what you're using. And again, if you're really familiar and comfortable, try to get out of your box and find a way. And maybe I presented something that you can maybe do a little more that you weren't doing before. Or we can still search that out in all the other professional development we have. And there's a really big difference in the plastic and the paper. So it's really that's something like you might have one with a different material and then compare it and then have them turn and talk and see what they think the difference would be. And again, that speaking and listening aspect and being able to, and Maria, you were saying you have ELL students, just that language learning and the practice speaking and listening is valuable in itself. Awesome. So the second grade one is really fun. I gave you a recipe. The recipe is a really easy recipe and it comes out great. And if you didn't do it, don't worry. I didn't expect you did, but it's really cool and it's really easy and it's really cheap. And I put them in individual bags. You know, the dollar store and bags are like very valuable for teachers these days. Gets sticky when it gets warm, so you don't want it to be too sticky. You got to mess with it if you don't like to get messy. This might not be your favorite lesson, but it really is kind of cool. So I get a little ball, I put them in a bag and give them to every one of the students. If it gets a little sticky, you put a little more flour in it and it just absorbs it a little bit more. So I'm again going to walk through quickly. I have the material. I have each of them have their own little baggie. We talk about and have some background. I use this off as a cumulative activity, but you could possibly do one before and after, but it's a lot of work. So I'm using this as a cumulative activity and I'll show you here. I have made this particular clay is non-cooking and it gets hard and it sticks nicely, or you can use Elmer's glue so you can glue the bottom of it when it's like soft and ready. So my lesson would be, please make me a model, because by then perhaps, because it's cumulative, they understand what a model is, making me a model of a landform that you understand and be able to explain and be able to write about how it was formed. And they might do it in writing. They might do it in their journal. They might just show you and tell you about it. And that would be the, anecdotal assessment of what they understood for that particular time. But it's neat because it can be painted on and you could even color it. And that's kind of like, painting really, some teachers are like, Maura, you do things that I will never do. I'm like, well, you know what? I'm having fun. I wish you would too. But if you don't, it's okay. Everybody's style is whatever it is. But this also is kind of neat because the coloring comes out with wonderful texture. So it can really look real. And I have a second grade at this, my friend's, I have a student teacher in a friend's class, and I gave her this lesson and boy, did she have fun with it. She's going to use it for her portfolio. And it worked out great. And they used paints and it was a big to-do. But if you make it look better and better, and it's really, like I say, very easy to do, this might not be something you could do in a digital situation. They're not going to possibly make this at their home, I don't think, but in a classroom, most likely. You could give them some in a bag for them to do individually at their desk, so you can provide for that spacing and distancing when you're doing it in your classroom for something like this. It's a long-term project. It doesn't happen in a day. So you're going to make sure that you have plans for like 20 minutes of time. And I'm just going to keep doing this while I'm talking. You have 20 minutes of time. You can use any colors, but the colors are going to be realistic. I would have probably had lots of videos that they saw, Billy Blue Hair and some other things on YouTube for second grade. Lots of wonderful learning about erosion and some of the ways that water and different materials on the earth are formed and how they change with the wind and the weather, which is a nice continual expansion from the beginning grades that we started with weather. And I'm just going to continue to make this nice project. And then I would possibly write about why I think it was formed, how I think it was formed, how long it took, etc. Because you want the science of it, like we were talking, the disciplinary core ideas. Remember those three things we talked about? The DCIs, or the disciplinary core ideas, are the ideas that you want the students, what the students should know. How are you going to get them to know that? You're not going to just tell them anymore. You're going to get them to experience it. The science and engineering practices, clearly, we're going to use our grid in a moment. Take your grid now. And you're going to do your checklist on your own now instead of me reading it, because I'd like you to read it real quick, but don't take a long time, because I want you to get used to reading these and knowing what they are and give yourself credit for understanding it, because it seems like all of you have a very good understanding of the practices already. So I'm going to take a minute for you to put a checklist and see if you implemented a lesson like this, because I see most people don't have Play-Doh or clay with them or anything else, or else I'd like to see your landform, but I'll show you mine. And ready? Got your grid, looking on second, going down the second column, read and check off. I'm going to give you a short time. Ready, go. While you're thinking a little more, for the people who are already done, I have real life pictures from around my school area. If you're from Meriden, you know they made that big old bridge, and there's all kinds of amazing landforms and stuff that they had to bulldoze down, etc. So I would probably utilize things like this to be able to have them see the models of the things and the aerial views that I got some pictures of, and we got to actually we were making bridges at the time, engineering. And we were seeing what kind of, the material, what it looked like on the land and the soil, and how it changed when they dug it, or also when the water came over it, how they tried to, it actually opened up a space like river systems and water systems do. And so we utilized, some real life ideas, pictures from around our area, even around your new construction. You can utilize and bring it into the real life idea to be able to have them know how that is. So I think I've given you enough time can I have a volunteer who might tell me which one of those was mostly the practice that was done? I don't know if Yvette, if you're still there, I don't want to put you on the spot, but I just want to hear from everybody. Would you have an idea? Anybody? Do you think they were all used? Which one was not used? Let's do the science approach. Which was really not used very much in this? Any idea?
Didn't seem to be a whole lot of math thinking there.
No, it wasn't necessarily specific math. I think that when you make a model, you have to think of scale, because it's a tiny little piece. And that's kind of like, Mrs. Graham, I can't make a landform. It's really big. A canyon is really huge. I'm like, well, that's really good. You noticed that. But we're going to make a model of, and again, I gave you that preface that we talked about models before, so they might have a little bit of background in understanding how models and scale. It isn't a mathematical number type thing, but it is a conceptual, interesting thing to discuss and have them get that, wrap around their heads when they're doing it. All right. So questions? Data wasn't used, right? So the actual data wasn't necessarily used. True. So that was the least one. And again, if you are learning anything, you're learning how some of the lessons that you do will have some won't. The choices I made today for you were purposeful so that they could have a variety. So I'm glad you're seeing some aren't, some are, etc. All right. So we're on our third activity for third grade. I love this activity. Do you have anything? If you don't have anything, it's fine, but we needed colored paper if you have it, or a piece of wrapping paper or a swatch. I'm going to show you what I have. I have this daisy looking thing, flower system, and then I have an ecosystem. I'm calling it an ecosystem. It's really a piece of cloth. You can use wrapping paper, etc. too, and it's easy enough to get, and they give them to you free. Wallpaper samples, if you remember, we can use those sometimes too. I'm going to use, I don't know, I'm in the mood for the water. So I'm going to use the water system here. So you're going to take, think about how you are using in third grade, you were thinking about how adaptation happens and how a living organism would be able to survive in a system and what it would need. And so any grade would probably work. This could be more or less complicated. I'm going to make it simple, but I have lots of ways to make this extremely complicated, where I actually used keys, and I made the dots because this is the ecosystem. And these dots I used in a paper punch. I paper punched some construction paper. You don't have a paper punch. You were doing it with a child at home. They could tear some pieces and they could tear some pieces, good for their little fine motor skills. And they're just going to put them there. I'm not going to tell them what we're doing yet. I'm just telling them to spread some little pieces of paper around this ecosystem, or I might say the piece of cloth and later tell them what it really is. Or I might just say ecosystem because I want them to say, what is an ecosystem? What is she going to make us do? You decide how you want to propose. Phenomenon, though, is very big with students where you want to engage them right away. So if I show them this fun little game looking thing, that already has engaged their interest. I've done it so many times that I know it's like, what are we going to do? They don't have any idea right away. And that in itself is a phenomenon because I'm going to make this a model. I'm going to make this cloth into an ecosystem. I'm going to make these little pieces of paper the prey, and I am the predator. And that's always fun. So we're going to use the predator-prey relationship, which we might have already made. I like to use this in the middle and the end of an investigation about, the ecosystem and habitats and stuff like that. I also can just use your fingertips. If you don't have them, I'm going to do it for you. But I love tweezers. They're the dollar store, and I'll tell you, the kids love it. However, before I do the activity, I hope I've already engaged you with how much fun I was just having. But these are, if I wanted to make this activity more advanced, I can make, it's called Predator and Prey. It's all over the YouTube. It's also on Share My Lesson. They're different animals that might have different pieces of their body that help them be able to survive, right? So we want to see what this might look like. What kind of well, let's talk about birds. Which kind of a bird, if I wanted to choose birds, but I don't have to, but I could, which kind of a bird would have some kind of a part of their body that would be able to be used to be able to meet its needs, right? Or a different bird. There's tweezers that have pointy tips, as you probably know, and there's flat tips, and there's all kinds of things like that. There's all kinds of tongs. Again, dollar store is a favorite thing in the world. Or you can make an elastic and 2 toothpicks, and you can make a pincher yourself, like almost like chopsticks, or you can use your fingers, whatever you decide. You could choose to do that. I would and have had the students choose their tool and picture what was the creature, the critter, the organism that was using that part of their body. Was it their claw? Was it their beak? Was it whatever else it might be? Okay, so you see where I'm going? Shake your head yes or no if you, okay? Because I think everybody understands what I'm saying, but if you don't, please tell me. All right, okay, so now I'm going to give myself a certain number of minutes. I love to time them. They love to be timed. I'm letting this go a little so in the lieu of time. And I'm going to give me a certain amount of time because I am the predator. I need to eat in order to survive. I'm going to give myself a chance to eat, but I know there might be other predators around. And sometimes I use myself as the teacher to tap them on the shoulder, which means I got eaten and I'm done. And let's see how many are left, kind of a thing. And again, I'm talking like you understand what the lesson is, but I also have done a key where the different color things are different things, like brown might be polluted things, but I won't tell them that. I'll give them the time to eat. And then I'll say, oh, and I'll pick a card of the big posters I have. And I'll say, oh man, how many people ate more than 5 brown ones? You ate more than 5 brown? Oh man, that was polluted. You have now not been able to make it. You did not survive because it was not safe for you to eat that. Or if you, on the positive note, yellow is superfood. And if you eat that, you're going to grow and reproduce and be able to have more and more little ones to be able to make a big number of animals and organisms in your community of animals. And I'm talking very general. And I'm talking lots of different ways you can use this. And you're going to use your own way, but I'm going to do it. Okay? I'm going to take half of that time and I'm going to pick up my things. I'm going to use the tweezer, and you can make up what we're going to do in your mind. And when I'm like halfway done and I won't go all the way through it, I'm going to stop when the timer is over, but in real life, I'm going to stop right now. I stop, time's up. if you look at my work, I have a few browns because I just happened to get that. I don't know what they are. And I have one blue. And so you can use this for data collection. You could take your notepad and you can make, B for brown, BL for blue, and you can put the tallies or the number of things. I would use numbers maybe in the third grade, but tallies work out great too. And see how many you had left. You might compare how many other kids had, and then you put out that key, the key that says the brown is polluted or that it's a superfood or what animal were you, et cetera, et cetera. So I know I'm talking fast, but I think you understand the lesson that I'm getting at. It's really fun and it is so versatile. It could be used in so many respects that I love to share this. And it is all around share my lesson and on the internet in different forms, but I like to use it in the simplest form because I think you get more out of it because you can, adjust it to you accordingly. So do you understand where I went with that? Let's take our grid and take a quick checklist of which practices, which science and engineering practices. This last time I am going to read it and you're going to check off what we did. All right. Develop and using models, planning and carrying out investigations. I skipped asking questions because I bet you checked it. Did you check that already? Because we often, as teachers, are professional questioners. So that one's probably going to be very regular across. I'll continue analyzing data, using math, constructing explanations, engaging in argument, and evaluating communication. Somebody want to share the most valuable one? Because we are almost getting at a close and a summary of our activities there today. Anybody really interested in sharing? Anybody who we haven't heard from? So again, looking at that grid, if we changed the K and the 1 and the 2 and the 3, 4, 5 into your lessons, and you use this kind of a lesson to be able to use and see what you used their practices and which ones you might need to do a little more of, that would be valuable in itself. I think that the science and engineering practices is a great start for people, but also to get really good at them and know where to use them. Even adept people who know science want to be able to determine what they need. So say you were really good at understanding how to use science, but you didn't really know how to use math very well, and you didn't often use it because it was something you were a little bit uncomfortable with. Then you could try to find something to put it in so that you can make that whole variety a little bit more comfortable for yourself. So I think that the only thing I can say about this in-service is that you got some very general activities. They are ideas and they are not lessons. And just like the NGS isn't necessarily lessons, it's a way to get to a performance expectation. You have another handout that has questions and the performance expectation on it for kindergarten, for first grade, second grade, third grade, and then it had engineering, which I don't want to leave out, and it's only going to take a few minutes. So there's usually, again, 5 or more for each grade level. This is only one of that grade level. For each, we saw only 1 of K, 1 of 1, 1 of 2, but there's usually 5 or more of each of the grade levels. And you're the one that are going to be most valuable, to be able to use them. You're going to know what your curriculum is. And some systems do it at a different pace than others. And it's not based on the regularity of it in the actual document of the NGSS. It's your curriculum that you're going to be following. But I really like to go back to the beginning to know what those standards say, so you could see, is it even in my curriculum? And if it isn't really in my curriculum, I'm going to try to get it there and do what they want in my curriculum, but I'm going to get those science and engineering practices in at least. And if I can't get that, I can maybe interject and find a way to get more detailed of the standards and the performance expectations looking at them. And the preschool teachers, thank you for coming, because all of that stuff is getting the kids readier and readier in all respects for what they need to do in their science learning in 5th and 6th and 7th grade. If we don't do it in primary, they're going to be lost. We need you all. We need you to do science. We need you to do science regularly. If you can integrate it, because that's the way you can do it and get it in, do it. Please do it. We all want you to do it. And we have to follow what you have to follow in your system, but it is a valuable time for the students that are going to be in our future. And you know, science is a very important part of that. Think about where we are now. And I think that's a good way to end. I wondered if anybody here has any questions that I can answer. I would really appreciate any questions. If it worked for you or did not, I think Jennifer told me that she had a link that she sent. And Jennifer, do you have anything that you'd like to?
Sure. So thank you so much. I thought that was wonderful. I appreciate it. I think Maura is going to do probably 4 and 5 for us for NGSS a little bit later in the year. If anybody is interested in catching that one, we're looking at maybe March. I did in the chat put the link to the survey if anybody is interested in giving us some feedback. It's the first time that Maura has done this virtually. I think you did a spectacular job, even managing the camera so that we could see what you were doing. And of course, that's real life practice for all of you who have kids bobbing in and out of virtual learning and stuff like that. It's all these skills are important and useful. The other thing I would just mention for anybody who hasn't taken a look at it yet, AFT, you know, your union has a site called Share My Lesson. And, you know, I love what Maura did here, which is that she gave you sort of general activities and said, you're going to fine tune this to be able to teach the thing you're trying to teach. If you need sort of more concrete ideas for hands-on, I would suggest you go to Share My Lesson, because that is a contribution from teachers all across the country who are sharing their best practices and best lessons and how to do a number of things. Yes, Maura has some on there.
I do. Thank you very much. If you don't mind me saying, I actually was asked to look at the lessons to vet them to see if they were appropriate for my area that I understood. And some of them are excellent lessons. Some of them are more in depth and some of them aren't, but they're available to everybody and they are exact. Mine were not, on purpose, because I didn't even know who was coming. So I had it general, and I can modify now because of my experience in all different realms, and you can too because of your experience. So if you want distinct lessons and steps, because some people need those when they're first starting out, or because they prefer that because that's the kind of a teacher that you are, that's where to go. Share My Lessons. And also the NGSS Hub is also another research and resource. On my PowerPoint at the end, they're listed. So if it's okay with Jennifer, can I get that to the people that participate?
Yeah, if you want to send it to me, we will go ahead and send out the link to this recording for anybody who wants to be able to review it, along with the PowerPoint presentation, and that way people will have both. And also, if you look in the chat, Matt O'Connor, our communications director, did put in the Share My Lesson website for anybody. And it's free, and you can search by your subject and your grade level, and you can get rather specific in terms of looking for the kinds of lessons that you want. But yeah, Maura, I would be happy to send out the PowerPoint if you want to send it to me.
It's easy to navigate the Share My Lesson, absolutely. And the PowerPoint is not very specific at all. It's just very general. I just didn't want this to be a PowerPoint. I wanted us to do the stuff. And we did. Thank you very much. I think that it's exciting that we're trying to do this no matter what, and that you're involved in teaching science is just a wonderful thing. Thank you very much for joining us.